What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today, my guest is Jimmy Schweitzer. He is the founder of James Vander Properties out of South Carolina, and he just finished the Let's X program, which is awesome. And he created a really cool video that I've shared over email, which was really awesome. He's a rapper, I guess.
I don't know about that, Jasper, but I try to put some rhymes together from time to time.
Awesome, and I love that video that you created. But yeah, Jimmy, welcome to the show. And today we're going to be talking about how to rent out boats on Airbnb, because Jimmy has a number of boats that he's renting out, and he's also added some boats to some properties as well.
That's right.
So really interested to learn more about this, Jimmy. But before we get into it, why don't you give us a quick background of how you got started with Airbnb and where you're currently at?
Sure. Yes, I've been doing Airbnb for 5 or 6 years. My wife and I actually got started by just renting out a room in our house, and that was very humble beginnings, but allowed us to learn the business and allowed us to pay our mortgage each month with just one room out of our house. And fast forward to about a year ago, started a business with my business partner, and the goal is to bring on lake houses and to focus on specifically lake front properties in North and South Carolina. And that is the business that we currently have. As Jasper said, the business is James Vander Properties. And we're excited to be on the show. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about the boats. Like, it's one thing I remember when I first started doing Airbnb in 2012. It was just like rooms and homes that people were putting on Airbnb. But over time, like, all these people started putting all these different things on Airbnb, right? And now you have such a wide range of assets. Like, you have unique properties like tree houses and like camper vans and all sorts of stuff. And there's people that put boats on Airbnb. I think there's a couple platforms that are kind of like an Airbnb for boat rentals. I don't know if I remember once renting a boat on ClickBoat. Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of ClickBoat, but a Boat Setter is one where you can go on and you can find a boat for, say Memorial Day weekend that's coming up for us here in the States. And, to find a boat for that holiday or whatnot is a cool thing. But it's even cooler to have a boat that's sitting there waiting for you that's specific to you, and that you don't have to go around trying to run around, especially on a holiday weekend or a busy weekend to find a boat. But those are some sites out there that you can do that for sure.
Yeah. So how many boats do you have?
So we have 3, and we have them actually in different areas, which is kind of cool. But I'll let you kind of guide me on that. Essentially, we own 2 boats, and then we have a property owner who has a boat as well, and we are renting out all 3.
And so give us some background on the boats. Like, what kind of boats are they? Sure. How many bedrooms, etc.
Yeah. So these are decent size houses on the lake. 4-bedroom is kind of what we really target. It allows about 10 people to stay at the property, and we combine that with a boat that at least can, of course, hold 10 people. So there's all kinds of different boats options that you have out there. As far as what we decided to focus on, pontoon boats. Very simply because anybody who has never driven a boat before can drive a pontoon boat. They're very easy to drive. They're very easy to coach and learn. And, our boats don't go super fast. They're not like the speedboat kind of type. We want people to have a fun, safe time on the lake. And we found that pontoons are really the best way to go.
Okay, so these are boats that you're not going to sleep overnight on. You're renting for the day.
No. So, all right, Leon, let me give you a little background. So we, like I said, we're into lakefront properties. We were trying to figure out a way to ultimately bring in some extra revenue, bring in more nightly stays, bring in longer stays. And so I started researching and looking into what are people looking for. And there's a handful of things. I'll share them with you real quick. People love like fire pits, at the lake house. People love game rooms for sure. And then the other 2 categories are in the boat kind of category. One is kayaks. So if you have a kayak or canoe, you're certainly not renting that out to your guest. You're just allowing them to use it as one of the amenities. But to actually increase revenue, we found a few listings that were actually renting a boat on the property, and it was an additional fee on top of what you'd pay. And once we saw that, we said, oh, well, that's exactly the kind of business that we want to get into to increase our revenue. And what we found is that people will book our place because there's a boat, whether they use the boat or not. And I found that to be an interesting thing. It gets you more exposure and provides more amenities that you're able to show on Airbnb and on your own site.
Got it. So the boats are really like an addition to the properties. It's not
That's
like
correct.
You're just renting the boat. Okay, got it.
No, and it's we don't rent our boat to anyone but our guests. So
Right.
the guests have exclusive rights to it and have the option to rent it or not. What we found is about 2 out of every 3 reservations during the summertime, so during our peak season, people want the boat, and so it's provided a great little revenue stream for us. We actually got the boats in May and June of last year, and each boat that we brought us in $10,000 actually, which is awesome. And so that was a great add to the bottom line.
Right. And then would you want to share how much did you pay for the boats?
Sure. Yeah. So the boats that we basically purchased, we had one for about 20,000 and another for 15. The one for 15 is a little older, kind of, if you will. But either way, I mean, it's going to pay itself off in really no time. And that's exciting for us to have a really good positive cash flow.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing investment if you've already made $10,000 that's each boat?
On each boat. And that was only in about a 4 or 5 month kind of span.
Wow.
So really the boat season for what, so we're in, my boats are in North Carolina. I live in South Carolina. We get a pretty good summertime, kind of range. So depending on where you are, obviously listening to this call, this may not make full sense, but our season is April until all the way through September. So we're only out a handful of months. And so we've already had people rent the boat, for this past month. And, so that gives you an idea of kind of this season, at least kind of in the, East Coast, North and South Carolina areas. So.
And then your charge, so this is an additional charge, right? You charge that through Airbnb, like through the resolution center. You just ask for the additional money, or do people pay in a different way?
We've had people pay in a variety of ways. We prefer it to go through the resolution center because simply there's no cost to us to do so. You just include it as extra services, and most people are able to do that. Sometimes that doesn't work. We've been able to send Venmo links through Airbnb and get paid that way. And we've had a couple people who have, wanted to meet up and actually pay cash in person. But that's a very rare kind of situation.
Do you guys need to sign some sort of like contract or something that if something bad happens on the boat, that's not your responsibility?
Absolutely. So let me kind of give you a little insight into the process. So once we got the boat, we started looking into what we needed. First and foremost, if this is a route that you want to go, absolutely look at local, ordinances, regulations. There's a lot that surrounds different lakes, and so the things that I share may not apply to you. So of course, do your due diligence. Past that, we established a process where we were able to actually rent the boats out remotely. Which is very appealing to us. We had to really think through what that process was. Very simply, we send the invoice through Airbnb. That was a pretty easy kind of thing to do. And, there's a lot of training out there of how you can, actually send money on Airbnb. And that worked. Or we had to get, Venmo or, even meet people in person for cash. But we also had to have a waiver. And prior to even having the waiver, we had to make sure that we had a commercial boater's insurance on the boat. So, if you, Jasper, you came to one of our properties and you said, hey, I want to rent the boat, and you have no boating experience, this insurance allows for you, as long as you have a driver's license, to rent the boat. And so it was important to get that insurance in place right out of the gate. What we required was a bareback designation. So what that simply means is that it does not require a captain. So if you have a captain's license, that's awesome, but is not needed to rent one of our boats. So we had to get insurance in place. Once we had that, they provided a waiver for us that we had to essentially use. We tailored a little bit to our boat, our boats. But overall, we needed to make sure that people are signing the waiver. And so we just use. I'm trying to think of the website. I think it's just like waiver.com or something like that for the waiver. We were able to upload the waiver that was required by insurance, and everyone that rides on the boat, not only the driver, has to sign it. So there's a little bit of steps that go into kind of getting it out there. Once we see that those two pieces have been taken care of, we basically have a smart lock inside of our house with a completely different code that you would never guess or anything of that nature with the boat key in it. And so that kind of gets you started on the process. When you check back in, so you're done for the day, you have to fill the boat back up with gas, and you take a picture of the fuel gauge and a picture of the boat being clean, so there's not a bunch of trash and stuff like that on it. Essentially you send that to us, and then we approve and say, okay, thank you so much for returning the boat, and that's kind of your A to Z kind of process, and then they just put the key back in the smart lock, and good to go.
Mm-hmm. How do you promote this to your guests? Is this something that's part of your listing, or is it something that you introduce once the guests have arrived?
I was very surprised to find when we were researching. I'm a big research guy, Jasper. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I like digging into the data and seeing, hey, what does the data show? And so I basically pulled up all the lakefront properties on, say, Lake Norman. That's a big lake here in North Carolina. And I was trying to figure out how I could differentiate myself from anybody who's maybe doing this. What I found is that there's not that many people who even have like boat rental in the title, which kind of blew my mind. Because you can kind of like essentially download all of the lakefront properties and just kind of search and find certain keywords. I only found like 3, and I knew that wasn't the case because we had already looked at a bunch of listings that had that in the description but not in the title, and it's just a big miss. I mean, you're talking about a number one amenity that people want when they come to the lake, so making sure that you have it in the title is super important.
Yeah, that makes a little sense. Yeah, because that's a super fun amenity to have, right? Like, who doesn't like being on a boat, right?
Exactly.
There's even a song about it, like I'm on a boat. Like you could probably rep it.
And I'll save your listeners that one. So I usually have a little more prep time on anything like that. But you're absolutely right. People love the boat. People, sometimes people bring their own boat. And that doesn't offend us. That's fine. We always have dock space for somebody else's boat. But anybody who is wanting to rent a boat, it's right there. And the kind of clientele that we appeal to and the guests that we have stay, they want convenience. And having a boat sitting right at the dock when you drive up and you're looking at the whole house and you're saying, oh, this is the kitchen and this is nice. But then you immediately go outside and you see the dock and there's the boat that you get to rent, and you don't have to worry about it being delivered. You don't have to worry about it not getting one because we save it for you. It's a fantastic amenity. People love it, and we've gotten raving reviews just because we had the boat, and people just they eat it up. It's definitely something people want to do when they come to a lake house.
Are people allowed to like bring drinks on the boat and like a speaker and like turn it into a little bit of a party?
Yeah, I mean, we don't encourage that, just like, we don't encourage parties at the house, but we know that kind of stuff happens, and we're totally fine with something like that. Again, they have to follow local regulations. And so for an example, this is kind of a crazy example. Again, do not quote me on this for any other state, but you are allowed to actually be drinking a beer and driving the boat at the same time as long as you are below, a 0.08 level, which is a very interesting rule. So like I said, look at your local rules and regulations, but that's okay. And that's legally allowed to happen in North Carolina. And so yeah, we want people to have a good time. They are responsible for, just like anything if they're staying at the house, the legal ramifications of anything that they do. And the waiver is very clear about that. So, it's covering our butts as far as that goes.
Right. Have you had any like interesting experiences so far with the boat rental? Like maybe somebody fell in the water or like got eaten by a big fish or.
Yeah, no tales of like Jonah or anything like that. But no, overall we've had just success with it. We've had a very few kind of problems. I'm trying to think of the only real problem we had was we had a float that we include with the boat. So it's like a tube that you can like pull some people around and have some fun with, and that popped, and so did that ruin their trip? No, it didn't. We were able to to replace the float. They had a multiple day rental, and so we were able to replace the float the next day, and it was fine. We really haven't had too many problems. I know that you certainly can, and this is something that definitely increases your liability. There's no doubt about that. But overall, you just want to make sure that you have all of those things in place to where you're really not in trouble if things do happen. So, and we want it to be as safe as possible. A perfect example is you got to include a number of life jackets, one per passenger. We make sure that there's an additional 2 or 3, regardless. And so we take take the safety precautions very seriously. And I would encourage you, if you go this route, that this is a whole other animal. It's not a house. It is something that's motorized. It's something that you can get hurt on. But as long as you have the right rules and regulations in place, and you provide over and above what is the minimum on safety, then you should be set.
Yeah. Is there anything else that like people should know if they want to start doing something similar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking kind of at my notes here. I think one area that I haven't really covered is actually finding a boat. And so how do you go about finding a good boat? There's a couple ways of doing that, and we've used all 3 of these. So I'll share these with your listeners here. You can obviously buy your own boat, or you already have a boat. That's the easiest way to go. We have purchased 2 of our boats, and it's basically one is in my name, one's in my business partner's name, and we use them for business, completely. So that's an option. Where do you go to find such a thing? Well, it can certainly be like a neighbor, or a friend and family, just like you'd find anything else. But I actually found both of our boats on Facebook Marketplace, and as crazy as Facebook Marketplace can be on trying to sell or buy things sometimes, it really was a great source for us to hone in on what we were looking for and essentially go and get 2 boats. One is a 2021, so a little more new, and the other is a 2007. And so there's a little due diligence that we had to do there as far as making sure that the older boat was good to go and had been kept up on maintenance and things like that. But that's certainly one option. Second option is to borrow or rent someone's boat. So we have a property we just brought on board that he has a boat, but it's not in our name. So we're managing the property, and we're basically going to be using his boat. And you're like, well, how can that work? Because you need this insurance and things like that. Well, we used, like what you talked about earlier, we use Boat Setter as the tool to book the boat. So it's not for anybody but the guests, and you're able to like basically block off the calendar and then just open up the calendar for that one day or for the 2 days that your guest wants to have it. So that's an option. And then the third option is partner up with someone, a boat company on the lake. While you certainly will not make as much money doing it this way, because there's a huge kind of chunk that they take. There's a lot of people that want to partner up that have a smaller boat company. Maybe they have 3 or 4 boats and they need the traffic. And so you can find somebody who has the boats, and you can get a little cut from the different rentals. So that's another thing that we do as well. So we actually just partnered up with a jet ski company because we don't do any jet skis. The liability on jet skis is crazy. Y'all don't even look into it. It is you don't want to go that route. But we've partnered up with a jet ski company that for every rental that we get, we actually get 10% of the revenue that comes in. So that can be another revenue stream. And those are really the 3 ways of kind of getting a boat for your guests and making some more money.
Yeah. I appreciate you walking us through that. And one thing that comes to my mind is like I always feel like boats are typically being underused, right? For the amount of time that a boat lies on the water and no one's using it versus the amount of time that people actually are using it. I know even for cars, it's pretty crazy. I just rented. I've been renting cars here on Turo.
Okay.
Because I just got to the US, and one thing I realized is we need a car. Yeah, this is a country where you kind of need a car unless you live like maybe downtown somewhere. But yeah, we're like we're I think it's like 2 or 3 miles to the nearest supermarket. So I'm like, okay, I could do with a bike, definitely, but at the end of the day, like to drive to the office where Eric is, like I'm going to need a car. So I've been renting these cars on Turo, and I noticed like there's people that have entire businesses on Turo. Like literally, like this guy that I rented a car from has like 15 or 20 cars or something on Turo. So it's it's definitely interesting that like these cars and boats, they're so underused, and I think it's awesome to what you're doing of like, hey, let's find a creative way to use the boat, and it sounds like it's been a really good investment on your end as well.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, I kind of shared the numbers with you on, we bought one boat for about $20,000. We did about 10,000 in revenue. All in all, with the boat payment and the insurance, we're looking at, about $300 to $400 a month. So, that comes out every year. But you're able to pay it off in just a very short amount of time, where it becomes a real asset to the company. And what's cool is, while we are talking about boats, some other things that have come to mind that you could rent out and I don't know the regulations on this kind of stuff, but like an ATV, or even electric bike, or things like that, where about any property could have an extra revenue stream with something that is motorized. And so kind of get the gears turning on, all right, well, I have this kind of property, this would be a cool vehicle, or whatever to have with it. And once you start thinking that way, then you can look into, what you need to make it happen. But I would encourage anybody who has a lake house, for sure, to look into the boat side, no doubt about it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think also, the additional revenue streams, especially in the markets where we're seeing some, saturation going on, where the supply has increased a lot over the last few years. Like those are sort of the ways that you can still increase your revenue, right? If the ADR is under pressure a little bit. So I think it's good to kind of put that seed in people's mind of like, hey, there are other ways to make more revenue than by increasing occupancy and just the ADR. Just really being creative of like, what can I invest in that's going to give me like a really high return on investment.
And that's really awesome that you said that, and something that I failed to say up until this point, you just reminded me, is not only did we get the boat revenue. I mean, that's an obvious bottom line, kind of figure. It just adds to the bottom line. It's a great revenue source. But we were able to increase our nightly rate by 10 to 15%. Like so we were able to say, okay, we now have this amenity, whether people use it or not. And I've said this already. They're like, okay, this is nice. This is something that we have the option to do. And it also increased the number of, stays that we've gotten, because people are coming to the lake to, have a boat. And when you have one there, you differentiate yourself from your competition, hands down.
Wow. Yeah. So it's really like a double whammy. It increases the revenue on the house, and then also you have that additional revenue stream as well. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all this. It was definitely a pleasure to have you in the Legends X program. Really awesome to see your rep videos, and I'm gonna have to find a way to share those because everyone's listening now, thinking like, "Hey, I want to see that video." Like, maybe we'll link it up in the show notes on catpad.com.
Go for it. So
if you don't mind it.
No, of course not. Of course not. And I'll leave your listeners with this. It's just, think outside the box. We don't have to get into the same rhythm of doing the exact same thing as our neighbors, literally, in some, situations where you are competing against your neighbor. So I'd encourage you guys to think, all right, what are some other things that I can provide or do that are different? And it doesn't even have to be for an additional revenue stream. It just could be, something completely unique to your property. And we have found that having a boat is pretty unique, on the lake, surprisingly enough. And we're doing it in the way that makes sense, and that we're following all the rules and regulations that go behind it. But I would definitely encourage you guys to think outside the box, get rid of the box, and create new revenue streams with all kinds of different things that you can have at your property.
Love it. Think outside of the box. Before we let you go, how can people find your listings? And if somebody maybe is listening and has a house or has a boat and they want to partner with you, what's the best way to find you?
Absolutely. So we actually just launched a Facebook group per the Mastermind Legends X kind of instructions, or things that set yourself apart in that way. And so if you go to James Vander, and that's with a V, so JamesVander.com, you will go to our Facebook page, and that is specific to lakefront homeowners. So we would love to talk with you about it. We have information in there updated on a daily about, today we posted something about how to prepare for Memorial Day, which is a huge, holiday on the lake. And it's really been a great community that people have come together to give tips and tricks and different things like what I'm sharing today. So definitely check that out. It's open to the public. You're happy to join, and we would love to have you a part of that community.
Awesome. So it's jamesvander.com.
You got
it. That's the best place. And if people want to stay at your listings, like, is there an easy way to find your listings, or are they also in the Facebook group?
We basically post them in the Facebook group. That would probably be the best source for now. We're working on getting a website up and running. That URL will eventually go to more of a permanent website. But either way, you'll be able to, from our website or directly, be able to join the Facebook group. Because I really feel that that'd be the best way for us to connect and for you to ask questions and just, pop in there with, hey, what do I need to do about this or that? And lake houses can be a different animal. Everybody thinks that their property is unique, and that's very true. There are some nuances and things with lake houses that other owners don't deal with. And there's also opportunities that don't come about without having a lake house. So we'd love to have you a part of that group for sure.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, Jimmy, thanks so much for jumping on here. It was awesome to have you on, and definitely learned some things. And keep crushing it.
I appreciate it, Jasper. Thanks for having me, and have a great day.
You too.